The first gunshot split the morning air like thunder cracking across the endless Texas sky. Wyatt Callahan's Winchester roared twice more in rapid succession, each round finding its mark with deadly precision. Three bandits down, one still moving. The last outlaw scrambled behind a boulder, desperation in his eyes. Wyatt advanced without hesitation, his weathered boots kicking up dust as fine as flour. The desert wind carried the acrid scent of gunpowder across the parched landscape. At 42, Wyatt's face was a roadmap of hard years and harder decisions, deep lines etched around eyes that had seen too much death. His fingers, calloused and steady, worked the lever action of his Winchester Model 1886 with practiced precision, the 45-70 government rounds powerful enough to drop a charging bull. In the Pacos Desert, Wyatt's voice rasped like boots on gravel, there are only two laws that matter: shoot first or die trying. The final bandit made his move, desperation overriding judgment. Wyatt's last shot echoed across the emptiness. Then silence, the kind that rings in your ears like the aftermath of a bomb blast. Wyatt had been late. Too late for the wagon train. Too late for the families who'd been slaughtered. His arrival had saved only the mules and whatever supplies the bandits hadn't looted. Or so he thought. A sound carried on the wind, faint, fragile, desperate. A whimper that didn't belong to the dying or the dead. Following it, Wyatt discovered what the outlaws had left behind. Hanging from the gnarled branch of a mesquite tree was a young woman, ropes cutting into wrists so pale they seemed translucent. Blood trickled down her arms, dripping onto the cracked earth below with hypnotic regularity. Her blonde hair hung limp, matted with dust and blood. Her dress, once white, now bore the colors of violence, crimson stains and desert dust. "There, it hurts," she moaned, the words barely audible through cracked, bleeding lips. Wyatt drew his K-bar knife, the same blade he'd carried through 3 tours in Iraq. With a single precise movement, he severed the manila rope. The woman collapsed like a marionette with cut strings, falling into his arms. Lighter than she should be, as if pain had consumed some essential part of her. "Easy now," Wyatt murmured, his voice gentler than seemed possible from such a hardened frame. He pressed 2 fingers against her neck, finding a pulse, faint but fighting. Survivors recognize each other. Her eyes fluttered open, blue as a desert sky after rain, filled with terror and something else. Something Wyatt recognized, the will to live, the determination to make someone pay. "Iron wolves," she whispered, before unconsciousness claimed her again. Wyatt felt his blood turn to ice. The Iron Wolves weren't just outlaws. They were organized, militarized predators led by a man Wyatt had hoped never to hear from again, Colonel Malcolm Blackwood. The ride back to Wyatt's ranch was silent, except for the rhythmic creak of saddle leather and the woman's shallow breathing. His homestead appeared on the horizon, not just a ranch, but a fortress. After losing his wife Marie and 10-year-old son James 7 years ago, Wyatt had rebuilt with defense in mind. High adobe walls surrounded the main house. Strategic firing positions covered every approach. Underground tunnels provided escape routes. Not paranoia, preparation. Inside, Wyatt laid the woman on his spare bed, cleaned her wounds, and waited. Night fell across the Pacos like a heavy blanket, stars piercing the darkness with cold, distant light. When she finally stirred, Wyatt was cleaning his Winchester by lamplight, the familiar ritual keeping his hands busy while his mind worked. "Water," she managed to say. Wyatt helped her drink, supporting her head with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his calloused hands. "Name's Wyatt Callahan. You're safe here." He didn't ask for her name. Survivors share information when they're ready. "Rebecca," she finally offered. "Rebecca Miller. My family was heading to California." Her voice broke. "They killed everyone. Made me watch. Something about the name tugged at Wyatt's memory. Miller, he repeated. Any relation to Mike Miller? Served in Iraq? Rebecca's eyes widened. My father, he was a sergeant, died in Fallujah. The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. Mike Miller, the man who had pushed Wyatt into a ditch and taken a bullet meant for him, the man whose dying words had been a plea for Wyatt to look after his family if anything happened. Your father was a hero, Wyatt said, the words inadequate against the weight of his debt. He saved my life in Fallujah. What he didn't say, I promised him I'd protect his family. I failed you. I'm 7 years too late. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. You knew my father? He was the best man I ever served with. Wyatt's voice was thick with memory. And the Iron Wolves who took you. Their leader is Colonel Malcolm Blackwood. Recognition flashed in Rebecca's eyes. He has an eye patch, calls himself the Colonel. We have history, Wyatt said, the understatement hanging heavy in the air. I shut down his human trafficking operation when I was Border Patrol. Put a bullet through his eye. Should have aimed 2 inches to the right. Before Rebecca could respond, something crashed through the window. Instinctively, Wyatt pushed Rebecca to the floor, shielding her with his body as he drew his Colt. When no attack followed, he cautiously retrieved the object, a small package wrapped in oilcloth. Inside was Wyatt's old Border Patrol badge, covered in dried blood, and a note. An eye for an eye, a family for a family. I'm coming for the girl, Callahan. This time, you'll watch. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Blackwood doesn't want money. He doesn't want land. He wants blood, and he won't stop until one of us is in the ground. Dawn broke harsh across the Pacos. Wyatt stood on his porch, watching the eastern sky bleed red. 7 years ago, he'd buried his rage along with his family. Now it rose inside him like a dust devil, focused, violent, and unstoppable. Can you shoot? He asked Rebecca when she joined him, her steps still unsteady. Dad taught me basics, nothing special. Wyatt nodded. Basics keep you alive. The rest I can teach you. The next 3 days became a compressed combat course. Wyatt taught Rebecca to handle his backup Colt single-action army, a .45 caliber revolver with ivory grips that had belonged to his grandfather. He showed her how to check the cylinder, load the heavy brass cartridges, and maintain the action with oil and cloth. Shooting isn't just about pulling a trigger, Wyatt explained, positioning Rebecca's stance. It's about becoming one with the weapon. Feel its weight. Understand its voice. He taught her the fundamentals, proper grip, sight alignment, breath control. Then came the advanced techniques, drawing from the hip, firing from cover, reloading under pressure. Lower your muzzle, Wyatt instructed as Rebecca aimed at bottles lined on the fence. Elbow tight to your body. Breathe in halfway out, pause, then squeeze with the pad of your finger, not the joint. Let the recoil surprise you. The bottle exploded. 5 more followed in rapid succession. The ghost of Mike Miller seemed to hover in the desert air. Your father had the same steady hands, Wyatt said quietly. He could field strip an M4 blindfolded, saved our unit more than once with his marksmanship. Rebecca lowered the gun, her hands steady but her eyes glistening. Will killing Blackwood bring them back? She asked. My family? Your wife and son? No, Wyatt answered honestly, but it will stop him from destroying more families. Sometimes vengeance and justice look the same from certain angles. Their training expanded beyond shooting. Wyatt taught her how to read tracks, the difference between a man running versus walking, how to tell how many horses passed and when. He showed her how to move silently across the desert floor, placing each foot to avoid loose stones and brittle brush. He trained her in using terrain for cover, how to disappear in plain sight using shadow and natural camouflage. From a hidden compartment beneath his floorboards, Wyatt retrieved a small wooden box. Inside, nestled in faded green cloth, was a tarnished silver compass. This was your father's, Wyatt said, placing it in Rebecca's palm. He carried it through 2 tours, said it always pointed him home. He closed her fingers around it. Mike would want you to have it now. Rebecca clutched the compass, this tangible connection to her father, to her chest. The student learned quickly after that, driven by something deeper than fear. On the 4th day, Sheriff Tom Reynolds rode up to the ranch. He and Wyatt had served together in the Border Patrol before Tom took the sheriff's badge and Wyatt retreated to his ranch. They'd stayed friends, or so Wyatt thought. "Heard you had company," Tom said, dismounting. His eyes lingered on Rebecca longer than necessary. "Also heard about trouble with the wagon train. Survivors mentioned iron wolves." "Just passing through," Wyatt lied smoothly. "Rebecca's my niece from Austin." Tom nodded, not believing it for a second. "Wyatt, if Blackwood's back in the territory, you need to be careful. Man's got resources now. Connections. I've heard rumors he's built himself a small army in the Badlands." "Appreciate the concern," Wyatt said, walking Tom back to his horse. They spoke a few more minutes, old friends sharing updates on mutual acquaintances, the drought, cattle prices. After Tom rode away, Wyatt returned to the house and began methodically checking his weapons. Rebecca watched, puzzled. "Something wrong?" she asked. Wyatt pulled a small black device from his ammunition bag. "Tracker, military grade. Our friend the sheriff left it behind. He crushed it under his boot heel. No one's more dangerous than a friend who's been bought." That night, they rode under cover of darkness to the Miller homestead 20 miles north. The iron wolves had left nothing standing. Blackened timbers reached toward the sky like accusing fingers. Rebecca stood in the ashes of her childhood, face illuminated by moonlight, grief and rage warring across her features. "I'll kill him," she whispered. "I'll kill them all." "Not alone," Wyatt replied. "Not tonight." They buried what remained of Rebecca's family in the hard desert soil. No markers, nothing to tell the iron wolves that anyone had returned. As they worked, Wyatt spotted movement on a distant ridge, a flash of light reflecting off glass. Someone was watching. They left false tracks heading west before doubling back east toward Wyatt's fallback position, a hidden bunker in the foothills he'd prepared years ago. 3 hours into their journey, Rebecca spotted dust on the horizon. "Riders, coming fast." Wyatt assessed the terrain with a veteran's eye. "Canyon ahead, narrow passage. We'll make our stand there." The shooting started 20 minutes later. 3 Iron Wolf scouts riding too confidently, too carelessly. Wyatt took the first 2 with his Winchester before they realized they were being hunted. Rebecca dropped the third with a clean shot from her Colt, her first kill. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Mike Miller's daughter. They reached the bunker as the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of blood orange and bruised purple. Built into the side of a hill and camouflaged with local vegetation, the bunker was invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Inside was Spartan but functional. Preserved food, water, ammunition, medical supplies, and most importantly, a clear escape tunnel that emerged half a mile away in a dry riverbed. "Sleep," Wyatt ordered. "I'll take first watch." Rebecca didn't argue, exhaustion finally overcoming adrenaline. When her breathing steadied in sleep, Wyatt allowed himself a moment of reflection. 7 years ago, he'd failed to save his family. Now fate had given him a second chance to fulfill his promise to Mike Miller. He silently vowed not to fail again. The rising sun revealed what the night had hidden, a column of dust to the south. The iron wolves had found their trail. Wyatt estimated they had 2 hours at most. "Time for you to know everything," he told Rebecca as they prepared. Blackwood didn't just traffic people. He was building an empire along the border. Guns, drugs, anything profitable. When I was Border Patrol, I stumbled onto his operation. The raid went bad. I got shot, put a bullet through his eye, but most of his men escaped. Wyatt paused, the memory raw even after 7 years. 6 months later, while I was still recovering, they hit my ranch, killed my wife Marie and my son James, burned everything, left Blackwood's dog tags to make sure I knew who sent them. Rebecca's face hardened. Why didn't you go after him? I did, Wyatt said, checking his rifle's action. Tracked him across 3 states, but he disappeared. Rumors said he went south of the border, built a new operation. I thought he'd forgotten me. His laugh was hollow. Turns out, men like Blackwood never forget, never forgive. Now he's back. And we're outgunned, outmanned, Wyatt confirmed. But we have something they don't. What's that? Wyatt's smile was grim. Nothing left to lose. The attack came with a sandstorm. Nature's fury provided cover as 24 iron wolves converged on the bunker. Visibility dropped to mere feet, the air thick with stinging particles. Gunfire erupted sporadically, muzzle flashes briefly illuminating the swirling dust. Wyatt and Rebecca held their position at the bunker's narrow entrance, using its bottleneck to their advantage. For 20 minutes, the attackers could only come 2 abreast, easy targets in the confined space. Bodies piled up, forming a grisly barricade. Then a new sound cut through the chaos, metallic thumping, followed by a hiss. Tear gas. The Iron Wolves had military equipment. Tunnel! Now! Wyatt ordered, covering their retreat with his last magazine. As they moved deeper into the bunker, a bullet caught Wyatt in the side, spinning him against the wall. Rebecca grabbed him, half dragging him toward the escape route. They emerged into the riverbed as explosions collapsed the bunker behind them. Wyatt stumbled, blood soaking his shirt. Rebecca tore strips from her petticoat, binding the wound as best she could. They needed shelter, medical supplies, and they had only one option left. Sheriff Reynolds was alone when they reached his remote cabin after midnight. His surprise at seeing Wyatt bleeding and Rebecca holding a gun on him quickly turned to resignation. Should have known you'd figure it out, he said, raising his hand slowly. How much, Tom? Wyatt asked, pain making his voice rougher than usual. How much to betray everything you stood for? Enough to retire somewhere people don't die of heat stroke or bullet wounds, Reynolds answered. Blackwood owns half the county now, Wyatt. All the right people are on his payroll. While Rebecca kept her gun trained on Reynolds, Wyatt searched the cabin. In a locked drawer, he found what he was looking for. Detailed plans for an attack on a gold shipment coming through Pacos Canyon in 2 days. The plans included names of every official on Blackwood's payroll and the location of the Iron Wolves' main camp. You were always a meticulous record keeper, Tom, Wyatt said, pocketing the documents. That's going to hurt Blackwood more than you know. Reynolds lunged for his shotgun. Rebecca fired once, her father's determination behind the shot. The sheriff crumpled to the floor, eyes wide with surprise. You've changed, Wyatt observed as they rode away from the cabin. Had to, Rebecca replied simply. World changed me. The wound in Wyatt's side slowed them down. By morning, fever had set in. Rebecca found shelter in a cave, treated the wound using Wyatt's field medical kit, and stood guard while he fought the infection. For 36 hours, Wyatt drifted between consciousness and delirium, sometimes mistaking Rebecca for his wife, sometimes calling out to Mike Miller. When clarity finally returned, the gold shipment was due the next day. Wyatt studied the maps from Reynolds' cabin, formulating a plan that was equal parts desperate and audacious. Blackwood will hit the shipment here. He pointed to a narrow pass in Pacos Canyon. 4 wagons, 16 guards, but 3 of them are on his payroll. So we warn the others? Rebecca suggested. Wyatt shook his head. No time, and we don't know who else might be compromised. We hit the Iron Wolves during their attack. They'll be focused on the gold, not watching their backs. Just the 2 of us against Blackwood's army? Wyatt smiled grimly. Not quite. From his saddlebag, he produced a small metal box containing a weathered photograph of 5 men in military uniform, his old Special Forces unit, and a tarnished silver whistle. The Eagle's call, he explained. In our unit, this meant drop everything and come running. Each of us has one. Blow it 3 times near any military outpost, telegraph office, or trading post, and the message gets relayed through a network of veterans. His eyes held a fierce determination. I sent the call yesterday while you were gathering supplies. 3 of my old team are already on their way. They'll meet us at Rattlesnake Ridge before dawn. Rebecca's eyes widened in understanding. A trap within a trap. Exactly, Wyatt nodded. We're about to call in some old debts. The gold shipment entered Pacos Canyon exactly on schedule. 4 heavy wagons, armed guards riding alongside. From their position high on the canyon wall, Wyatt and Rebecca watched as the convoy reached the narrowest section of the pass. The ambush unfolded exactly as predicted. Iron wolves emerged from hidden positions. The 3 corrupted guards turned on their companions. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the canyon walls. Blackwood himself led the attack, his eye patch and commanding presence unmistakable even from a distance. As his men secured the wagons, he executed the remaining guards with methodical precision. That's when the high ground erupted. Rifle fire rained down from carefully selected positions around the canyon. 3 veterans of Wyatt's old unit had answered his call, bringing with them enough firepower to start a small war. Mason with his Sharps rifle, capable of picking off targets at 1,000 yards. Rodriguez with twin revolvers, fast as lightning. And Cooper, the demolitions expert, who had rigged the canyon entrance with dynamite to prevent escape. The iron wolves, caught in the open between the wagons and the canyon walls, scrambled for cover that didn't exist. Methodically, the hidden shooters cut down Blackwood's men. Rebecca, positioned across from Wyatt, picked her targets with her father's precision, the compass a reassuring weight in her pocket. Blackwood, realizing the trap, retreated toward a narrow side canyon, taking 4 men with him. Wyatt signaled to his friends to finish the remaining iron wolves, then followed Blackwood alone. Rebecca, seeing Wyatt break position, moved to follow him. The side canyon narrowed until it became a dead end, a rock wall too steep to climb. Blackwood turned, his remaining men forming a semicircle around him. His single eye found Wyatt approaching, Winchester raised. Callahan, Blackwood's voice was exactly as Wyatt remembered it. Cultured, controlled, with underlying madness. Still playing the hero after all these years. It's over, Colonel, Wyatt replied, using Blackwood's self-appointed title with deliberate contempt. Your men are dead or scattered. Your network is exposed. Blackwood smiled, the expression never reaching his eye. I took your family, Callahan. Made you watch, just like you took my eye. Made me watch as my empire crumbled. He tilted his head. Your wife begged, you know. Begged for your son's life. I made her watch him die before I killed her. Wyatt's finger tightened on the trigger, rage threatening to overwhelm his judgment. We're nothing alike, he managed to say, his voice tight with controlled fury. You're a rabid dog that needs putting down. The girl looks like her father, Blackwood continued, his voice silky with malice. Miller was a problem solver, wasn't he? Always so righteous. I wonder if she'll scream the same way he did when... Blackwood's men opened fire simultaneously, cutting off his taunt. Wyatt dove behind a boulder as bullets chipped stone all around him. Return fire from the canyon entrance. Rebecca and the others providing covering fire. 2 of Blackwood's men fell. Then another. The last turned to run and collapsed mid-stride. Only Blackwood remained, bleeding from multiple wounds but still standing, still defiant. He had retreated to the edge of a cliff that dropped 30 feet to jagged rocks below. Go ahead, he snarled at Wyatt. Finish it. Become exactly what I made you. A killer with nothing left but revenge. Wyatt approached steadily, Winchester aimed at Blackwood's chest. 7 years of grief, rage, and guilt focused into a single moment of decision. Behind him, he heard Rebecca approach, taking position at his side. Mike Miller's daughter, standing tall. "This isn't revenge," Wyatt said quietly. "It's justice." Blackwood lunged forward, a hidden derringer appearing in his hand. Wyatt and Rebecca fired simultaneously, his Winchester and her Colt speaking as one. The colonel staggered backward, his remaining eye wide with shock. He teetered on the edge of the cliff. "An eye for an eye," Blackwood whispered, blood bubbling between his lips. His body went limp, toppling backward over the edge. The sound of impact echoed through the canyon. Then silence. Rebecca lowered her father's gun slowly. "Is it over?" Wyatt stared at the cliff edge for a long moment. "Yes," he finally said. "It's over." 1 month later, Rebecca stood on the porch of the rebuilt ranch house, watching sunset paint the Pacos in golden crimson. The property was coming back to life. New fences, repaired barn, fresh paint. Inside, Wyatt hung his old Border Patrol badge on the wall, cleaned and polished. "Accepted their offer," he announced. "Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal for the Western District, starting next month." Rebecca nodded, unsurprised. Wyatt had found his purpose again, his reason to engage with the world beyond these boundaries. "What about you?" he asked. "California still calling?" She shook her head. "Nothing for me there. Thought I might stay here if that offer's still open. This land needs someone to look after it while you're chasing outlaws." She touched the silver compass that now hung from a chain around her neck. Unspoken between them was the debt, Wyatt to her father, Rebecca to Wyatt. But it was more than obligation now. They had become family forged in blood and fire. "Your father would be proud of who you've become," Wyatt said quietly. Rebecca smiled, her hand resting on the Colt that had once been her father's, now rightfully hers. "Some wounds never fully heal," she said, looking out over the desert that had nearly claimed her life. "But we learn to live with them, maybe even find strength in them." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain, rare and precious in the Pacos. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Not an ending, Wyatt thought, a beginning. "Storm's coming," he observed. Rebecca's smile held the determination that had gotten her through hell and back. "Let it come. We're ready."